Welcome to Stuck Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Drift, and I want startups to be wildly successful. Today, we have KimBoo York with us, and she is the Task Mistress. We're going to be talking about some productivity tips for you startups, because when you're all you have, you got to make each minute count, right? Welcome, KimBoo.
Hey, glad to be here, Mary.
So let's talk about productivity. What are some of the first things people need to think about?
I think the first thing that happens, at least with most of my clients who are starting a new business or starting a new project, is the overwhelm. It's really easy to get overwhelmed by the things that you have to do. I have a couple of tools that I recommend that people use for that. One is the very simple brain dump. I don't know if you've ever done one before. Yeah, and you're nodding at that. It's a little bit like improv. It's just kind of just like letting it all out on the page or the screen, depending on how you're doing it. But it really helps people get a clear idea of what's worrying them, because usually the first 5 to 10 things are the most urgent or upsetting or critical things that they need to do. But then the next 20 to 40 are also important things. So brain dump, I know it sounds very old school, but I have found it has been so helpful working with my clients who are starting a new enterprise or a new business. So that's definitely the first thing.
And then you get that list that you can cross stuff off of and get the endorphins happening, right?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm a techie. I got into project management through IT. So everybody thinks I just use digital everything. And I do use digital products a lot. But my everyday to-do list is the old-fashioned write it down so I can scratch it off. Man, I love that. I just like scratch it right off of that list.
Right. So after a brain dump, what's another productivity tip?
I would say the next productivity tip is to sort things into baskets. Let's put it that way. I want people to take the brain dump that they've used and then create 4 columns of the 4 major things that they're doing and assign everything on that list to those columns. You can do 3 columns, you can do 5 columns. I'm not really strict about the number of columns, but try to keep it 1 page. Like we're not doing a whole spreadsheet of 20 columns of things. So one might be, the website you have to build for your business, all the legal things that you have to do, the licensing, or if you're renting property or whatever you're doing, if you have IP that you need to see an IP, intellectual property rights lawyer about, things like that. The next one might be products, whether they're digital products or actual manufacturing. So dump things into those columns. When you see, and I guarantee you, whenever anybody does this, there's going to be 1 column that's really short and 1 column that's really long, and you can really see where your energy is going and where it needs to go, which is the more important thing. And this is doing these things, the brain dump, and then organizing into the buckets or the columns is a way for you to get on top of the overwhelm. It's a way for you to understand the big picture, because I find that that's the first thing that goes. Everybody gets lost in the weeds. They feel overwhelmed. They've lost sight of the big picture and what they really need to be working on.
Right. And then another big problem a lot of startups have is setting priorities. You get down a rabbit hole of something that you like to do, and then the stuff you have to do doesn't get done. So what do you suggest about that?
Again, I tell people to go back to the lists that they've made or the buckets that they've created and step back and look at what's really important. I am an IT person. I actually enjoy building websites. It's not something I do professionally, but I work on my own website. I can get really into the, how do I move this widget over to the left a little bit and then not actually make a post for the newsletter that's supposed to go out. But if I'm looking at the big picture on a regular basis, once a day, once every other day, not so often that I get overwhelmed again, but that I can see what I really need to be working on, that will keep me on task. I realize I can't spend 3 hours fussing with my website. I need to write that newsletter because that's what has to go out to the people who are expecting me to give them productivity advice.
Right. Okay, excellent. These are excellent tips for startups. Another one?
Oh, another one. Do not think of your calendar as your end all and be all. I like people to think of their time management tools, whether that's a project management service like Asana or Monday, or whether that's just a Google Calendar or a paper planner, as tools. Those are there to help you make you be productive. A lot of people get into the idea that they have to, time block or fill up every second, and then that way they'll get everything done. That is a lie. It's deceitful. Like, you think your calendar's all full of things and you're getting things done. But because you're not looking at the big picture of the project itself, you're not seeing the steps that need to happen, it's really easy to get tied into the idea that you're very busy and you have no time on your calendar when what you're doing is busy work.
And even with a calendar, people forget to block off 5 minutes between appointments. You need some time to write down what you talked about and what your next steps are.
Especially if you're working with clients, if you're a coach or something, or therapist, there's lots of reasons you need to take that time. I do believe in time blocking, where you're blocking a set of time to do something, but you are so right. You can't just jump from, writing the newsletter or working with a client one-on-one to working with the next client, or, jumping in to update the website, or meeting with the person who's doing the renovations on the property that your store is going to be on. You've got to spend some time in the transition zone. So whether that's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, it's different for each person. I personally, I need a lot more transition time. So I take 15 to 30 minutes. But that's just the way that I work and how my brain works. You are absolutely right. Do not fill up every minute of your hour of your day with doing something. You've got to have that transition time.
Right. And there's an expression out there that's eat the frog first. Do you want to explain that?
Eat the frog first is about doing the thing that's the most unpleasant for you first. It's about that thing, like sometimes when you sit down at your desk and you have to email a supplier or unhappy customer with some not great news, and you just do everything else, and then you never get to that thing, and then it gets put off to the next day. A lot of times when we're talking about eat the frog, we're talking about some of the bigger things that are intimidating to us. I work with a lot of clients who are not very tech savvy, so developing a website is kind of their frog. They're very timid about trying to do it, and they're scared of it, and they don't want to do it. And so the requirement is they have to sit down every day and do one thing towards that goal. So eat the frog first. Once you've done that, man, it's a high. Like you know that, Mary, like you get done that thing and you're like, yeah, I can do anything. Like, it's just absolute triumph. And that carries you through all the other work that you need to do. So it's actually a really good piece of advice. There's a whole book on it out there. Yeah, it's really, it's a classic.
It's a classic. And just getting things off. Oh, if you can't do it, if it's that uncomfortable, hire out. That's one of the big mistakes startups make, is that they really feel like they have to do it themselves. And you know what? If it has to be done and you're not good at it, you need to hire someone to do it for you.
Absolutely. Outsourcing and knowing that you need to outsource. Sometimes that learning curve is a little slow, but like you said, if it's something you keep putting off, probably a good sign that to outsource it. And you can outsource payroll, you can outsource development, you can outsource website design, you can outsource just about anything. If it's causing you that much anguish and a mental hurdle or roadblock for you, absolutely.
And don't think that you can't afford it. You can't not afford it. It's going to cost you in lost profits. It's going to cost you in time wasted if you don't spend the money and hire out.
Yep, totally.
Well, thank you so much, KimBoo York. Any parting thoughts for our startups?
Mostly just you can do it. I love working with startups. I love seeing the great things that people are thinking about doing and starting and making happen out in the world. But just take it, one frog at a time, one task at a time. Just give yourself some grace and give yourself the ability to work through the things you need to work through, because what you have to share with the world is important. I think it's going to be great, whatever you're doing out there.
Thanks again, KimBoo York, the Task Mistress. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. The best thing you can do is book a synergy call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.